most regular people are already facing a recession. Most regular people haven't seen a 20 to 25% pay raise over the last couple of years, while your cost of living has gone up 20 to 25%. They say the inflation level is around 8%. Well, that CPI, that inflation level that is reported, is massaged. The way that CPI is measured has changed over the years. And the reason why it's changed is to kind of alter the way the data is presented. Are they lying to us?
Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? The definition has changed multiple times. So it really doesn't matter what you call it, right? We are where we are right now. How do people plan in the short and the long term for it right now? What are your thoughts on what the heck's going on?
Sure. So there's a lot of answers to this question. I'm going to give like the technical answers. I'll give my opinion and we'll talk about then what do you do about it. So the word recession creates a lot of anxiety, fear, panic, creates a lot of emotions in people. And the reality is recessions and market crashes create more millionaires than any other time because they create opportunities that some people, what I like to say, people with the minority mindset can see. Now, are we in a recession? Well, this has become a very political answer. Let me just kind of be very honest here. So traditionally, before 2022, the definition of a recession was 2 quarters, aka 6 months of an economic slowdown. We saw that early in 2022, but then we had a lot of people come out and say, essentially, this doesn't count as a recession because it's not bad enough. Essentially, that is temporary. It was kind of like how inflation was transitory in 2021, that the recession is temporary in 2022. Exactly. So then came the 3rd quarter of 2022 and the economy didn't slow, it actually grew. And so now everyone's saying there's no recession, and it's this kind of mixed opinion where some people are saying we're going to enter a recession in 2022 and it's going to be bad. Some people are saying we're going to enter a recession in 2022 and it's going to be very mild. And then you have people saying we're not entering a recession in 2020. Sorry, I'm talking about 2023, and we're not entering a recession in 2023. And so a lot of opinions out there. Now, are we in a recession or not? Well, by definition, okay, just the traditional definition, we're focusing on the technical side. You have to have this organization, the National Bureau of Economic Research. They come out and then they declare we are in a recession. Has that happened? No. But what's interesting is, when a recession does get declared, and we're talking about generally speaking, if and when a recession does get declared, they backdate the recession to when the recession started, meaning to when the economy started to slow down. Now, for all intents and purposes, most regular people are already facing a recession. Most regular people are struggling financially. Not everybody, but most regular people haven't seen a 20 to 25% pay raise over the last couple of years, while your cost of living has gone up by many times more than 20 to 25%. They say the inflation level is, the CPI is around 8%. Well, that CPI, that inflation level that is reported, is massaged. And, a lot of people like to say that, but no, you really have to understand the data. I don't like to just say things, but there's a lot of the way that CPI is measured has changed over the years. And the reason why it's changed is to kind of alter the way the data is presented. So what does that mean? Well, for example, one of the biggest pieces of CPI is inflation, which is for regular people. Well, one of the biggest factors in this consumer inflation number is housing costs. But when they determine how much housing costs have inflated, they don't look at home prices and how much they inflated. They don't look at rental prices and how much they inflated. They look at something called OER, owner's equivalent rent. And you might say, what's that? Well, essentially, what you do when it comes to owner's equivalent rent is you survey homeowners and you ask them, if you were to rent your home out, how much would you rent it for? And based off of those numbers, they then say that this is our housing inflation numbers based off of how much people would rent their home out for more now than before. And if you look at like the 2022 housing or CPI numbers, and you look into the housing costs, it says the housing costs have gone up by around 5% or so. And if you look around you, Most people, if not the vast majority of people, haven't seen the housing costs grow by 5%. They've seen it grow by double digits, 10, 20%. And this is one of the largest factors in our CPI data. So this is what I mean by, that CPI number that many people see reported isn't the real inflation that many people feel. Many people's rents have gone up by more than 10% over the last 2 years. Many people's home prices have gone up by more than 10%. I mean, housing affordability is at some of the lowest levels we've ever seen because home prices have gone up so much while interest rates have gone up so much. So for the vast majority of people, for most people, I should say, they're already feeling the impacts of an economic slowdown. Now, when does a recession actually happen? Well, a recession actually happens when we talk about when does the pain be felt everywhere, when you see the big problems. Well, that's when people run out of money. And right now, people are still spending. They have the ability to spend. Why? Because, well, we have the ability to go into debt thanks to credit. And, as unfortunate as it is, this is the way the system works, that we have our economic factors. The economy runs on spending. The more somebody can spend, the more money I spend at Chipotle, the more money Chipotle makes, right? And so if I don't have any money in my bank to go buy anything from Chipotle, that doesn't mean I can't buy anything from Chipotle because I still got my credit cards. And so I can go to Chipotle and swipe my credit card, and Chipotle is still making money and the economy can continue to grow. And what we're seeing happen right now is there's still excess savings out there from the pandemic stimulus, but it's dwindling. However, credit card debt is also rising at some of the fastest rates we've ever seen. So spending is still there, but what is that spending? People are going into debt to be able to afford many times just their basic necessities. And so, there's a lot of different factors that play here, from housing, which is one of the most interest rate sensitive sectors, because in housing, when interest rates go up, you immediately as a home buyer feel the pinch, because when you think you're buying a home for 5%, but then you get to the closing table and find out it's a 7% mortgage, that's a huge difference in your payments. So housing is very sensitive to that. However, we haven't seen a huge hit to housing prices because sellers don't have that motivation to sell. Sellers are saying, well, I don't want to sell my home for a discount, so I'll just keep my home on the market for a little bit longer. What would change the housing market? Motivation. What would cause sellers to be motivated? Financial distress. If somebody lost their job, now you become a much more motivated seller. Well, what would cause people to lose their jobs? An economic slowdown. What would cause an economic slowdown? People not being able to spend. So you can start to see how everything gets tied in together, but there's a lot of different factors at play. Interest rates have a big contributing factor to the broader health of the economy. The question is now, what is going to happen with interest rates? The Federal Reserve Bank says that they're going to continue raising interest rates through 2022. In December, they want to raise it again, and then continue raising in 2023 and not cut at all. Now, that's what they say. That doesn't mean that's what they're going to do. But if they stick with that to bring inflation down, that's going to cause pain. That's going to cause pain in the sense that people will not be able to spend it the way they could before. It's also going to cause pain to corporations, because now corporations have loaded up on tons of debt in 2021 and early part of 2022. And what did they do with that debt? Well, we saw a record amount of corporate buybacks in 2021. And it's not just corporate buybacks, we're talking about leveraged corporate buybacks. And I know I'm really expanding upon this short question that you asked me.
I love it.
But a leveraged corporate buyback is when a corporation looks at their balance sheet and they say, okay, we have this machinery, this real estate, we have all these assets. And the values of everything skyrocketed in 2021. So corporations went to banks and said, look, we have an extra $100 billion worth of equity just sitting there. Like, imagine your home price going up. And now you go to the bank and you do a cash out refi and you pull out as much cash as possible. Well, that's what corporations did essentially. They did a cash out refi against the value of their balance sheets, and they pulled out all this debt. Now the question is, what do you do with that debt? Do you take that cash and do you invest it in more growth, machinery, and innovation? Well, yeah, some corporations did that, but you also saw the largest number of share buybacks ever in 2021. And so they take this cash and then they use it to buy back their own stock, which makes the shareholders rich. And there's a time and place for that. But now these corporations have huge amounts of debt on their balance sheet. Now, there's a difference between the cash out refi that you can do and the corporate debt that the corporations take, because hopefully when you do a cash out refi, you're at least doing a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Now, I wouldn't recommend taking out the cash and just buying a boat. I mean, if you're going to do it, just understand the risks. And if you're going to do it, invest, right? Get something that's going to produce cash flow. But now imagine all these corporations taking out this cash and then buying a big vacation, which is essentially what you do when you just give it to the shareholders and not investing in the company. But now they have all this debt, and it's not a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. These debts have short terms, which means that interest rates readjust after a certain number of years, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 3 years, something like that. And so everyone is a little bit different, but they're short-term readjustments. Well, now if you borrow this debt at 2.5%, and then it readjusts at 7 to 8%, well, your payments on that debt are going to skyrocket. And this is a big concern for corporations coming into 2023 and 2024 who have all this debt, because now your shareholders are going to say, well, share prices are higher because you bought back the stock. So we need higher earnings, meaning we want to see higher revenues. We want to see higher profits. Well, if shareholders are going to want to see the higher earnings, but your expenses are significantly higher because now you're paying so much more money to pay off your debt, then what does that mean? Well, you're going to have less money to invest in growth while our economy is slowing. People have less and less ability to spend. So you can start to see all the different factors tying together. And then, of course, we have the national debt issue where our government has $31 trillion worth of national debt. This, again, is not a fixed rate 30-year mortgage. These are many times 5 years and under terms. And so our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, I think this was 2020 or 2021, she was talking about how you don't need to worry about our national debt levels because our interest rate is so low. Look at the cost of servicing the debt. Don't look at the actual amount of debt. Well, here we are today, and the cost of servicing the debt is significantly higher than where it has been in the last decade. And our amount of debt is higher than anything we've seen in the last decade. And I mean, if you want to just look a few years prior to Janet Yellen's statement in 2020 or 2021, when she was the Federal Reserve chairperson in, I think this was 2017, she came out and she's, you can Google this, and she was talking about how the 20-some trillion dollars worth of national debt that we have, so 20-some, this is like $10 trillion less than what we have now, should keep you up at night, that it should keep investors from sleeping because of how much national debt we have. Here we are today with national debt significantly higher and interest rates significantly higher.
Yeah, and we've done a video recently. We'll drop a link on that astronomical credit card debt. I mean, it's just skyrocketing right now. And anytime you're using a T as in trillions in front of something, obviously that's a big number. You touched on Yellen. You know, I think she's just lost tremendous credibility over the last couple of years. And we'll find it and we'll drop a link to the last video we were on here. We had you on, I believe it was summer of 2021. And we were talking about exactly this. We were talking about the transitory and, you know, the sky's not falling, and they weren't making any moves at the time. You know, so I'd full on point the finger at Yellen. I'd full on point the finger at the Fed Reserve and Jerome Powell, because from a political standpoint, they were just trying to really just sweep this under the rug. They were not making any hikes. And now it's like every other week, it's a 75 BP hike, 100 BP hike here and there. So, I mean, they're absolutely crushing the economy and cooling it off by design. Too bad they didn't start doing this when they should have, because it would have more tapered off as opposed to just hitting this brick wall like it feels like we're hitting right now. Any thoughts on that? And we shared the same thoughts then. Why aren't they doing anything right now? And then here we are, you know, a year plus later, and we're getting these massive, massive hikes.
Yeah, you know, a lot of opinions here, and it really frustrates me because, you know, I try to keep my channel as unbiased as possible because I want to make it educational. And this is where it gets really difficult, because I remember in 2020, I think that's the first time I posted something really where I said my opinions. And I was like, this was when the Federal Reserve Bank first announced unlimited bond buying, so unlimited stimulus, but then they also announced corporate bond buybacks. And essentially what that means for definition is if you're a corporation, big corporation, bonds are loans. If you need money, well, now you can issue out a bond and you can get a loan from the government. Well, the Federal Reserve Bank has been known to do bond buybacks in times of distress. Like they bought treasury bonds in 2008. They did that in 2020. But then for the first time ever in 2020, they started buying corporate bonds, meaning they started lending money directly to corporations, and they're not supposed to do that. And this is where it starts to get really dicey because wait, how do you, the Federal Reserve Bank, decide who to lend this money to? And that's when it started to get really kind of dicey, where this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Well, at the same time, you had every single person saying that this money printing, unlimited quantitative easing, is not going to cause any inflation. And of course, somebody who understands the basics of money will tell you, well, if you print more money without producing more wealth, the inevitable result is inflation. And in 2021, we talked about this, right? That this is when nobody said inflation was an issue. Inflation is transitory. Well, how is it transitory? The thing that I kept saying is that the Federal Reserve Bank have fairy dust to make the inflation go away.
and so sell me some. I'll take some.
And they're made up of supposedly, these are the smartest and most educated economists in the world saying that inflation is transitory. That is, it's not going to be around. And yet here you have regular people, random people on YouTube saying, wait, how does this make any sense? And, it's just, are they lying to us or are they really just ignorant? And
I don't know which one of those I really want to believe, honestly.
Exactly. And that's exactly where it leads to, where I think all want to believe that they all have the best interest in their minds, but at some point it's like, how can you say that printing trillions and trillions of dollars is not going to cause any inflation? And then in 2021, you say it's transitory, that it's going to be gone by 2022. And now in 2022, you're saying that it's going to be gone without causing much pain to the economy.
The Inflation Acceleration Act, Reduction Act that was just signed, that's certainly going to help out, it appears, right?
The more money you spend, right? Let's spend money to get inflation to go away. Look, it's like, I get some people, we have good intentions, but sometimes the good intentions end up having bad consequences for the people you're intending to benefit. And this is why, for regular people, the best thing to do is not to rely on the Fed to take care of you, not to rely on the government to take care of you, but to be financially educated and understand how you can take smart decisions, how you can make smart decisions with your money. That way you can be a smarter investor and take better care of yourself, because the reality is, this is the world. Inflation disproportionately benefits the wealthy and the financially educated, and it disproportionately hurts the middle class, the poor, and the financially uneducated.